Hello there, YouTube and YouTubers. Today we're going to be looking at the top 5 blue commons in Kaldheim. I think that blue is the color that many people love most in most of their sets. I think it's often the highest rated color identity people can get in all sorts of magic tests online and stuff. But in this set, I think blue is less interesting than in most other sets. Still, we have to look at the top 5 commons because they are very interesting and very important for what we're drafting. So let's go and take a look. But before we get to our number 5 pick, I'd like to talk to you about the grading skill we're using for the commons we got here. As you can see, right below there, we've got a grading skill going from 0 to 100. 0 of course being the worst cards, while 100 is of course the very best possible cards you could ever get. We got from 0 to 35, we got cards which you could better not play. You'd probably be better off playing one more land than you usually would. Then from 35 to 60 we got most of our commons. These are cards that are about at the strength level you would expect a common to be. If you go from 50 to 60 you're already at a pretty good common. But above that we get the real good stuff. 60 to 80 are the very strongest commons, and also commons you would say are at the level of a good uncommon, and also the good uncommons themselves are also in this category. Then at 80 till 90 we got the very strongest commons of the entire set, and also pretty good rares. And then above that, the 90 to 100 range are cards that by themselves should make you win a game. What does that mean for our top 5 blue commons? Well, you should expect that every single one of these commons is at 50 or higher range, and we'd hope of course that our top 5 commons are in the range of 60 to 80, maybe even very close to that 80. But let's go and take a look. As we quickly go to number 5. At number 5 we find this very good bird boy over here, Ugly Raven. It's of course a 4-mana 3/3 flying, which is quite reasonable. But it has the foretell ability as well, which makes it very flexible to cast. So if you want to, you can foretell this on turn 2, later on playing it for its reduced cost, enabling you to maybe double spell or maybe cast this and foretell something else at a later time. So it's quite flexible in the things it can do. It of course being a 3/3 means it's pretty good at attacking and also pretty good at defending, though because you're paying for its evasion ability I would say it's more of better when it's attacking than when it's blocking. You might see that the points we've given to this card here are pretty low for a top 5 common. I would agree. In fact, I would say that it's very likely that this is the worst common we're going to have in this top 5 series. But even then, it's still in our top 5, and at a score of 50 aggro and 56 control, it's still a decently good card. One of the things we'll start to notice while we're going over the cards in this top 5 set, blue doesn't have that much points to gain by utilizing, I would say, its synergy. So these cards are very often standalone pretty good, while going for their synergy or going pretty deep on that is not often that beneficial. Though at the same time, putting the card in the correct sort of deck, being it an aggro deck, a mid-range deck, or a control deck, can be very good for the value the card has. One of the things that's keeping this card at bay is that there are actually quite many 2-drops in this format. Well, we would say many 2-drops, but in a way that's only because there are just so many foretell cards. The foretell cards mean that you very often have something to do on turn 2, and if you don't cast the Ugly Raven through its foretell ability, a 4-mana 3/3 flying is fine, but not something you would write to your parents about saying, wow, how amazing is this? Right above me are a few synergy cards for the Ugly Raven. Some of them, the Giant Ox and the Masked Vandal, are more defensive cards, meaning that it's easier for you to start attacking with Ugly Raven, while others are ways of getting this creature from a 3/3 to a 4/4. A 4/4 flying is very dominant in this format. I have written down its king. Well, it means that you can start dealing a good amount of damage per turn. 4 is, in that regard, much more relevant than 3. And it's also meaning that it's very hard for your opponent to deal with the card through, say, a fight ability or removal. So 4/4 flying is very good in this format, and that's why the Struggle for Scamfar, Mohit of the Frost, and Goldfame Pick are also there. Let's continue to our number 4 card. Here at number 4 we find the uranus, which I swear we didn't put there only because it rhymes. The card is, as you can probably tell already, not that amazing in aggro, but it's quite good in control, and it's also pretty good in mid-range. In fact, I would say it's at its very best in a mid-range deck. One of the strengths of the card is that it's very flexible, very versatile. It can be used in many different ways. For instance, you can destroy your opponent's strong tokens with it. You can remove a creature on your opponent's side where they use the combat trick on, or you can use it to reactivate one of your creatures which has been hit by your opponent's enchantment removal, the Bounding Gold or Bind the Monster. And it's also pretty good when you use it in combination with one of your own sagas. Especially the Trickster God's Heist is a very good card to use in combination with the uranus, because Step 1, you trade one of your creatures for one of your opponent's better creatures. Step 2, you change one of your not so very significant lands for one of your opponent's much better lands. Step 3, you put the effect of the Drain 3 on the stack, but before it goes off, you run ashore your own Trickster God's Heist and your own creature which you have given to your opponent, getting the Trickster God's Heist back in hand, the creature which was yours, which you had given to your opponent, back in hand, and you get to, of course, keep the creature you traded with your opponent in the first place. Well, after all that, the third effect of the Trickster God's Heist, the Drain 3, will still go off, so you probably still have some time to recast your creature or recast the Trickster God's Heist. One of the best things about uranus is that if you're already in control of the game, it's very good at keeping your tempo, while, of course, denying your opponents to regain the game. So, for instance, you are starting to attack for like 4 or 5 flying damage per turn, and your opponent suddenly plays a flying creature to block with. The uranus can easily make sure that you have a few more attacks before your opponent has sufficient defenses again. The number 3, blue common. At number 3 we find our very good Iceman, the bergstrider. It's a card that I would say is slightly better in aggro than it is in control, though the difference is not that big. What it does is that it keeps the tempo you currently have, or in dire straits it can make sure that your opponent loses a bit of tempo for the time being. But it's better when you're already aggressing. In the same way, it's also better when you're playing a Giants deck than in most of the other decks. It itself being a Giant, of course, and Giants many times being an aggro or mid-range deck. You might not be surprised to find out that Bergstrider is very good with Squash, and it's also very good with other cards that can deal with smaller creatures. The Iron Verdict is a sort of synergy card with the Bergstrider because you don't need to have snow mana in order to use the Iron Verdict on a creature you've targeted with the Bergstrider, which means you can kill a defensive creature with toughness 5 or less. All in all, I would say, if you're playing Bergstrider, you don't really need that many snowlands in your deck. Say 3 or 4 maybe are already enough to enable the ability of the Bergstrider, and that is nice to have because it means that you have more options during the drafting. Here comes number 2. Mistwalker. Finally a blue common, which I would say is at the strength of a pretty good blue uncommon. It's of course a changeling which can combine well with some of the uncommons and rares in the set, but the thing it does best of all is being one of the best blockers you could really imagine. It has flying, which means it can block many things, and it has 4 toughness, meaning it is much bigger than most of the cards costing 4 or less mana. In fact, this card, being a changeling, is one of the best giants in the entire set. It's of course very cheap, only 3 mana, while most of the other giants are 4 or 5 or more mana, and that means that Glimpse of the Cosmos and Squash are both best enabled by a card like the Mistwalker. Something else the Mistwalker does very well is gain you a lot of time. If your opponent, for instance, doesn't currently have a creature bigger than it, they will either have to use a removal on your only 3 mana creature, or they will have to accept that they're doing, say, half the damage per turn they otherwise would with their 2/2 creatures, 2/3 creatures, even their 3/3 creatures. Which means that, in a way, Mistwalker can be seen as a life gain card. Jarl of the Forsaken is a card I often like to use in combination with Mistwalker, because then you can even kill your opponent's Lindworms or other very big creature or rares. in combination with the mistwalker, while your opponent was maybe thinking that finally I have a creature that can get past this stupid 1/4 flyer. Because the card gains you so much time, it's better in control than it is in aggro, though it's still quite playable in an aggro deck. And I would say that the synergy strength of the card is usually not that high, though it can be changed by, say, some specific rare you've drafted before it. Last and certainly our number one. Behold! It's Behold the Multiverse. I think this card is the best payoff you can get in common in blue. As you might have noticed, many of the other cards in blue were more of a controlling card, and this card, Behold the Multiverse, is what is your payoff for getting all this time. We've seen the Mistwalker right there up at the top. That, of course, is a very good turn 3 Mistwalker, gaining us a lot of time so that we can use Behold the Multiverse later on to gain real card advantage. It's very good at finding your rares or finding answers to very specific problems your opponents might have. For instance, they might have an unblockable creature. Behold the Multiverse can help you start looking for an answer for it, or a very big creature. Same reasoning, it can help you find the answers for a card where you might not have many of the cards in your deck that are an answer to the question they're asking. The question being, can you answer this specific card? When I play this card, I'd like to synergize it with other instants in the deck. That's why we see the Demon Ball, Squash, and even Broken Wings at the top there, because it's very good to say in your opponent's turn, okay, do I need to remove something? If the answer is no, then it's very nice to, at the end of their turn, say, okay, in that case, I would like to gain card advantage and I would like to start pressuring you instead. I also think that Behold the Multiverse is much better if you're playing a deck with 17 or more lands, because both the Behold the Multiverse and also the cards you find with it will eventually probably need a lot of lands. As you can see, this card can be strength 70 out of 100 in a control deck, and it also has, as opposed to many of the other cards in blue, more of a synergy aspect. So that's the instance I told about, or cards that give you time, like Mistwalker or other defensive cards. So if you draft a Behold the Multiverse, try to make a more defensive deck and try to see if you can find some instant synergies or time buying synergies for your deck. Anyway, good luck with drafting blue. I think it's a very good color, though not that synergistic, and mostly defensive as well. Anyway, those were the top 5 commons in blue. I hope you had some fun. If you did like the video, please give us a like and subscribe. You will find other top 5 commons in the other colors of Magic on the channel, and also some other videos about drafting and about Magic the Gathering in general. Anyway, see you around.